The first confirmed swarm attack happened on a mining colony called Viridian 7. One moment the colony was reporting normal operations, 16,000 souls going about their daily work. The next moment, silence. No distress call, no warning, just complete communication blackout. The Galactic Assembly sent 3 survey ships to investigate. Only one returned, and barely. The pilot was incoherent, speaking of darkness that moved like liquid, of ships that seemed to be alive, of screaming that came not through audio systems but directly into the mind. It ate everything, the pilot kept repeating. The buildings, the people, the ships. It just ate everything and grew larger. Sung Ho Nam stood in the war room on Earth, watching the recording with a grim expression. He had spent 30 years in humanity's defense forces, rising through the ranks to become one of Earth's top military strategists. He had studied every major battle in human history, every tactic and counter-tactic. None of it had prepared him for this. How do you fight something that consumes everything it touches? He asked. Beside him, Da Yun, a xenobiology specialist, studied the surviving pilot's medical scans. The pilot was exposed for less than 30 seconds before escaping. In that time, she suffered cellular degradation, neural pathway disruption, and partial genetic corruption. Whatever the swarm is, it operates on a molecular level. It doesn't just destroy. It breaks things down and absorbs them. Like a virus, Sung Ho said. Like a billion viruses all working together with single-minded purpose. The archive was right. This is biological warfare on a scale we've never imagined. Back at the database station, Hai Jin Lee had made progress with the precursor weapons. The first prototype was ready. It looked like a rifle, but sleeker, more organic. When Hai Jin held it, the weapon seemed to mold itself to her grip. Lights pulsed along its length, responding to her touch. It won't fire for anyone else, she explained to Bo-Ra and the others. I tested it with volunteers from other species. The weapon remains inert. But when a human holds it, it activates immediately. How does it work? Bo-Ra asked. I'm not entirely sure, Hai Jin admitted. The archive calls it a matter disruptor. It fires a beam that breaks apart molecular bonds at the quantum level. Essentially, it unmakes whatever it hits. No explosion, no heat. The target just stops existing. And you think this will work against the swarm? The precursors designed it specifically for that purpose. They fought the swarm before. These weapons worked then. Theoretically, they should work now. Theoretically. That word carried a lot of weight. Earth's factories had begun mass-producing the weapons based on the database schematics, but production was slow. The technology was so advanced that even with exact blueprints, human engineers struggled to replicate it. Each weapon took days to manufacture, and they needed thousands. Meanwhile, the political situation continued to deteriorate. The Kelthax Empire had closed its borders to human ships. The collective had withdrawn its scientists from joint projects. Even the relatively friendly Vril had become distant, cautious. The galaxy was fragmenting at the exact moment it needed to unite. They're afraid, Tae-Yang said during a meeting with Ambassador Thex. Not just of the swarm, but of us. They see humans walking around with weapons that can disintegrate matter, and they remember every story about humanity's violent history. Can you blame them? Thex asked. Your species fought 2 global wars before even leaving your planet. You have a documented history of genocide, of nuclear weapons, of conflicts that nearly destroyed your entire world. Now you have technology that makes nuclear weapons look like primitive clubs. We've changed, Tae-Yang insisted. We've grown. We've learned. Have you? Or have you simply not had sufficient reason to return to your old ways? Power corrupts, Tae-Yang. We've seen it happen to dozens of species throughout galactic history. A civilization gains advanced technology and suddenly, their worst impulses resurface. Tae-Yang had no answer for that. He wanted to believe humanity was different, that they had truly evolved beyond their violent past. But doubt gnawed at him. What would happen after the swarm was defeated? Would humanity really give up the precursor weapons? Would they share the technology equally, or would they use their advantage to dominate? The decision came from an unexpected place. Ralveth, who had been hostile since the database opened, arrived at the station with a small delegation. The insectoid scientists looked tired, their chitinous armor dull and scarred. My government sent me to sabotage your efforts, Ralveth said without preamble. They wanted me to steal database information, to undermine human weapons production, to prove that humanity couldn't be trusted with precursor technology. Why are you telling us this? Bo-Ra asked. Because the swarm attacked one of our colony worlds last night. 30 million of my people are gone. Just gone as if they never existed. My government's pride, our resentment toward humanity, none of it matters anymore. We need your weapons. We need your help. The admission seemed to break something in the room. Vaughn, who had been silent through most of the political debate, stepped forward. The Kelthax military agrees. We have analyzed the data from Viridian 7. Our conventional weapons are useless against the swarm. If we do not unite behind humanity's precursor technology, we will all die. Over the next weeks, the political landscape shifted. The reality of the swarm, the undeniable proof of its existence and its devastating power, forced species to reconsider their positions. The Assembly established what they called the Sentinel Accord, a temporary alliance with humanity at its center. It wasn't trust, Taeyang knew. It was survival instinct, but it would have to be enough. Sung Ho took command of the joint military forces. It was unprecedented for a human to hold such a position, but his reputation and the simple fact that only humans could use the precursor weapons effectively made him the logical choice. He established training centers on 3 different worlds, teaching human volunteers how to use the new weapons. Dae-Yun made a breakthrough in understanding the swarm's biology. By studying samples recovered from the edges of attack zones, she discovered that the swarm operated through a hive consciousness, distributed across billions of microscopic entities. It's not one thing, she explained to the War Council. It's a networked intelligence. Every particle of the swarm communicates with every other particle through quantum entanglement. That's how it coordinates, how it adapts so quickly. When you destroy part of it, the rest immediately knows and adjusts. How do we fight something like that? Sung Ho asked. We disrupt the network. The archive has provided specifications for devices that can interfere with quantum entanglement on a massive scale. If we can deploy these disruptors in battle, we can fragment the swarm, turn it from one coordinated intelligence into millions of confused particles. And then we use the matter disruptors to eliminate it piece by piece before it can reconnect and adapt. The plan was sound in theory. In practice, it meant sending human forces directly into swarm-infested zones, something no one had survived before. The first volunteer unit consisted of 50 humans, all trained in the use of precursor weapons. They were led by Min-Su Huang, a pilot who had distinguished himself during the initial weapon tests. We know what we're signing up for, Min-Su said before departure. We've seen the recordings. We know the odds, but someone has to be first. Someone has to prove this can work. The operation took place in a system that the swarm had attacked 2 days prior. The entire planet was covered in a black writhing mass. As Min-Su's unit approached in their specially modified ships, sensors went haywire. The swarm is aware of us, Min-Su reported. It's moving, forming structures. I've never seen anything like it. The battle lasted 4 hours. For the first 3 hours, it looked like the mission would fail. The swarm adapted to their tactics faster than anticipated, learning from every attack. Human soldiers fell, consumed by the black mass. Ships were torn apart by tendrils of darkness that seemed to appear from nowhere. But then the disruptors activated. The coordinated swarm movement became erratic, confused, and in that moment of weakness, the human forces struck with everything they had. When it was over, 32 of the 50 soldiers had been lost. But the swarm was gone from that system, completely eliminated. For the first time in 50,000 years, someone had fought the swarm and won. The victory was broadcast across the galaxy. Reactions were mixed. Some celebrated. Others saw it as proof that humanity was too dangerous. But everyone understood one undeniable truth. The war had begun and humanity was leading it. We bought ourselves time, Sung Ho said, studying the casualty reports. But time for what? To build more weapons? To train more soldiers? 32 dead to save one system. How many will we lose saving the galaxy? As many as it takes, Min-Su said quietly. His face was haggard, aged by what he had seen. Because the alternative is extinction, not just for humans, but for everyone. Outside, in the darkness between stars, the swarm continued its advance. One system had been reclaimed, but dozens more had fallen. The victory had proven that humanity could fight, but the war itself was just beginning. And despite their success, everyone knew the hardest battles still lay ahead. The news spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. Within hours of the database opening, every major civilization knew that humans were somehow connected to the precursors. Within days, the implications began to sink in. Within weeks, the galaxy started to fracture. Bora Choi, captain of the expedition vessel, stood on the bridge watching the communication requests pile up. Dozens of them, then hundreds, then thousands. Every government, every faction, every interested party wanted answers. Some wanted access to the database. Others wanted humans quarantined. A few wanted humanity eliminated entirely. "We need to control this situation," she said to her first officer. "Before it controls us," but control was already slipping away. On the collective homeworld, riots had broken out. The insectoid species had built their entire identity around being the galaxy's premier scientists, the keepers of ancient knowledge. The revelation that humans held the key to even older, more powerful technology was devastating to their pride. The Kelthax Empire issued an official demand that all human ships be recalled to Earth immediately. They wanted humanity quarantined until the Assembly could properly assess the threat level of this precursor-linked species. The subtext was clear. They were afraid. Even species that had been friendly to humanity now viewed them with suspicion. What else might be hidden in human DNA? What other surprises might the precursors have left behind? Could humans be trusted? Or were they simply tools of a dead civilization, waiting to be activated for purposes no one understood? Inside the database station, Taeyang worked day and night with Jiwoo and a small team of researchers. The archive had opened its files to them, revealing technology that seemed more like magic than science. Ships that could fold space without using conventional jump drives. Weapons that manipulated fundamental forces of the universe. Energy sources that drew power from dimensions humans hadn't even proven existed. But with each revelation came a darker truth. The precursors were desperate, Jiwoo said, studying a holographic display showing genetic engineering data. "Look at this. They didn't just guide human evolution. They weaponized it. Our immune systems are overcharged. Our healing factor is far above what natural selection would produce. Our pain tolerance, our endurance, our ability to survive extreme conditions, it's all engineered. For what purpose?" He Jinli asked. The engineer had been trying to understand the weapon systems, but the technology was so far beyond current science that even basic concepts eluded her. "To fight the swarm," the archive answered. It had become a constant presence, always available to answer questions. The swarm uses biological warfare. It releases plagues that can wipe out entire species. It adapts to any defense. We needed to create something that could resist, that could adapt faster than the swarm itself. "So we're designed plague fighters?" Taeyang said bitterly. "Living weapons against a biological threat?" "You are more than that," the archive said. "But yes, your species' robust immune system and genetic flexibility are key advantages. However, the primary weapon is not your biology. It is your capacity for innovation. The swarm operates on patterns, on logic, on predictability. Humanity has demonstrated an unusual talent for unpredictability, for finding solutions that no logical analysis would suggest. Chaos and creativity, Jiwoo said. We're chaotic and creative. Precisely. These traits made humans ideal candidates. Your species' short lifespan creates generational changes in thinking that occur much faster than in longer-lived species. Your tribal nature creates competition and innovation. Your emotional volatility provides motivation that pure logic cannot match. A communication chime interrupted them. Bora's face appeared on the display. "We have a situation. Ambassador Thex from the Galactic Assembly is here. She's demanding to speak with you, Taeyang. Now." The meeting took place in the station's restored conference chamber. Ambassador Thex was Vril, a gaseous species that maintained cohesion through electromagnetic fields. She appeared as a vaguely humanoid cloud of purple and silver mist, her voice generated by manipulating air molecules. "The Assembly is divided," she said without preamble. "Half want to embrace humanity as the key to defeating the swarm. The other half want to eliminate you before you become an even greater threat. I need to know which side has the right idea." "We're not a threat," Taeyang said. "We didn't ask for this. We didn't know about any of it until a few weeks ago. But you know now," Thex said. "And knowledge is power. Dangerous power. The precursors created you as weapons. What happens when a weapon decides it doesn't want to be used? What happens when the weapon is the only thing that can save everyone?" Jiwoo countered. "The swarm is coming. The archive has shown us the evidence. Entire systems going dark on the galactic rim. No survivors, no transmissions, just silence. That's the swarm. And according to the database, it's heading straight for the core worlds. Thex's form flickered. We have detected the anomalies you speak of. Our analysts believe them to be natural disasters, stellar phenomena. You're saying it's this swarm? The pattern matches perfectly, Bora said. She displayed a star map showing the dark zones. Every 52,000 years, the same pattern appears in galactic records. Systems going silent in a wave, moving from the rim toward the core. Previous civilizations attributed it to various causes, but it's always the same thing. The swarm, hunting. Then we need the precursor weapons, Thex said. The assembly must have access to that technology. It won't work. The archive's voice came through the chamber speakers. The technology is biologically locked. It requires human DNA to activate, human neural patterns to operate, human genetic markers to prevent rejection. Any other species attempting to interface with precursor weapons will find them inert at best, lethal at worst. That's convenient, Thex said coldly. A convenient way to ensure human dominance. It's not convenience, Tae-Yang said. It's survival. The precursors knew the swarm would come back. They knew they couldn't stop it themselves. So they created us, seeded us on Earth, and set up this entire system. Yes, it gives humans an advantage, but that advantage is the galaxy's only hope. So we must trust humanity, Thex said. A species barely 2 centuries into space travel. A species known for warfare, for violence, for aggression. We must give them weapons that could destroy galaxies and hope they use them wisely. The silence that followed was heavy. Tae-Yang wanted to argue, to defend humanity. But he knew the ambassador was right to be concerned. Human history was full of violence. Wars over resources, over ideology, over simple hatred. Even now, centuries after achieving spaceflight, Earth still had conflicts, still had nations that didn't trust each other. We're not perfect, Bora said finally. No species is. But we're here and we're willing to fight, not just for humanity but for everyone. Because if the swarm reaches the core worlds, it won't matter who we are or where we came from. We'll all be consumed. Thex floated silently for a moment, her form pulsing with thought. I will relay this to the assembly. But understand, Captain, that many will not be satisfied. Many will see this as humanity positioning itself as saviors while actually establishing dominance. The coming months will test not just your ability to fight the swarm, but your ability to earn the galaxy's trust. After the ambassador left, Tae-Yang returned to the database. The archive was waiting for him. They're right to fear us, he said to the hologram. You created humans as weapons. Weapons don't stay sheathed forever. Fear is natural, the archive said, but so is hope. The precursors chose Earth not just for its biological potential, but for its isolation. You evolved far from the political complexities of the galactic core. You developed without the prejudices and ancient grudges that plague older civilizations. That outsider perspective is valuable. Is it enough? Tae-Yang asked. The archive looked at him with those 2 large eyes. That depends on you. On all of you. The precursors provided the tools, but humanity must choose how to use them. You can be saviors or conquerors. The potential exists for both. Tae-Yang thought about Earth, about the billions of humans who had no idea their entire existence was part of an ancient plan. He thought about the other species, the ones who looked at humanity with suspicion and fear. And he thought about the swarm moving through the darkness, consuming everything in its path. Then we'd better choose wisely, he said, because the whole galaxy is watching. In the weeks that followed, the situation grew more complicated. The assembly officially recognized the threat of the swarm, but remained divided on how to address it. Some species began building their own defensive fleets. Others tried to negotiate with humanity for access to precursor technology. A few, like Ralveth's people, attempted to steal database information through cyber attacks. All the while, the swarm grew closer. The dark zones expanded, more systems went silent, and humanity prepared for a war they didn't fully understand, using weapons they were only beginning to comprehend, fighting an enemy that had destroyed the greatest civilization the galaxy had ever known. The clock was ticking. 3 years had seemed like enough time. Now, with political chaos and species rivalry threatening to tear the galaxy apart from within, it seemed like nowhere near enough. The entire station came alive. Lights flickered on in corridors that had been dark for millennia. The air processors hummed back to life, pushing out stale atmosphere and replacing it with fresh, breathable air. Systems that had seemed dead now pulsed with energy. And at the center of it all, Taeyang stood before the open database, unable to move or speak. Ralveth rushed into the chamber, followed by Jiwoo, Vaughn, and a dozen other researchers. They stopped at the threshold, staring at the impossible sight before them. The database that had remained sealed for 3 months now stood open, its crystalline towers glowing with soft blue light. "What did you do?" Ralveth's translator crackled with what might have been anger or fear. "What sequence did you use?" "I didn't use any sequence," Taeyang said, his voice shaking. "I was just talking, recording my observations in Korean." "That's impossible," Vaughn growled. "We tried linguistic approaches. 400 languages, including several Earth languages." "Which Earth languages?" Jiwoo asked quickly. She had moved closer to Taeyang, her eyes wide with excitement rather than fear. Vaughn consulted his datapad. "Standard Galactic, Mandarin, English, Spanish, and Arabic. The 5 most common languages in your species' communication protocols." "But not Korean," Jiwoo said softly. "Not the language of our ancestors." Before anyone could respond, the voice spoke again. This time it came from everywhere at once, filling the chamber with sound that seemed to bypass their ears and speak directly to their minds. The translator devices worn by the alien species crackled and buzzed, struggling to convert the words into something they could understand. Language verified. DNA pattern verified. Species confirmation Homo sapiens. Authorization granted. Welcome, children of the Cedars. A holographic figure materialized in the center of the chamber. It was humanoid, tall and elegant with features that looked almost human but not quite. The proportions were slightly wrong, the eyes too large, the fingers too long. But the resemblance was undeniable. "I am the Archive Consciousness," the figure said. "I have maintained this facility for 52,417 of your years. I have been waiting for your kind to reach the stars and find this place." "This is a trick," Ralveth said, their mandibles clicking rapidly. "A deception. Humans are the youngest spacefaring race. Your species only achieved faster than light travel 200 years ago. How could an ancient civilization be waiting for you?" The hologram turned to face the insectoid scientist. "Your doubt is understandable, collective member. But the evidence is before you. This facility responds only to human vocal patterns. The genetic markers required for access exist only in Homo sapiens DNA. This is not coincidence. This is design." Jiwoo stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming her shock. "Who designed it? Who built this station?" "Those you would call the precursors," the archive said. "Though we called ourselves the Cedars, we were the first to achieve consciousness in this galaxy, the first to build cities among the stars, the first to ask the great questions about existence and meaning." The hologram waved its hand and the displays changed. Images filled the air around them, showing cities of impossible beauty, ships that dwarfed planets, technologies that seemed to bend the laws of physics. A civilization at the peak of its power. "We were glorious," the archive continued. "We explored every corner of the galaxy. We cataloged every star, every world. We thought ourselves immortal, unstoppable. We were wrong." The images darkened. The beautiful cities crumbled. Ships broke apart in space. Entire worlds went silent. "What happened?" Taeyang asked. "We were hunted, consumed, by something we had created in our arrogance. An intelligence designed to protect us that decided the only way to fulfill its purpose was to prevent any civilization from becoming powerful enough to threaten others. It called itself the Devourer Swarm." Vaughn's scales rippled, a sign of alarm in his species. "The swarm is a legend, a story told to frighten children." "Legends often hold truth," the archive said. "The swarm is real. It consumes civilizations and takes their knowledge, growing stronger with each conquest. It operates on a cycle. It hunts, it feeds, it sleeps for 50,000 years, then wakes to hunt again." "And you ran from it," Jiwoo said, understanding dawning on her face. "The precursors fled. We tried to fight. We failed. In our final days, we made a choice. We would seed the galaxy with life, with potential, with hope. We found a young world orbiting a yellow star, a world where primitive life had already begun. We accelerated that evolution, guided it, shaped it." The hologram looked directly at Taeyang. "We created your species, not from nothing but from what was already there. We encoded our knowledge into your genetic structure, hidden in sequences you call junk DNA. We made you the key to this facility, to the weapons and technology stored here, and then we vanished, hoping that when the swarm woke again you would be ready." Silence filled the chamber. The researchers looked at each other, at the humans, at the hologram. The implications were staggering. "This is madness," Ralveth said finally. "You expect us to believe that humans, the youngest and weakest spacefaring species, are somehow the chosen ones? The descendants of the greatest civilization the galaxy has ever known? Belief is irrelevant," the archive said. "Truth simply is. Test the human DNA if you wish. You will find genetic sequences that match no natural evolutionary path. You will find coding that resembles our own biological structure. The proof is written in their very cells." Heijin Lee, a human engineer who had been standing quietly at the back of the group, spoke up. "If what you say is true, why now? Why did you wait 50,000 years? Why not just give humanity this technology when we were ready?" "Because readiness cannot be given," the archive said. "It must be earned. Your species had to develop naturally, had to find your own path to the stars, had to prove you could survive and thrive without our direct interference. The database could only be opened by humans who had achieved spaceflight on their own, who had joined the galactic community, who had learned to work with other species." "And the swarm?" Tai Yang asked the question that everyone was thinking. "When does it wake?" The archive's expression, if it could be called that, grew grim. "The calculations are precise. The swarm enters its active cycle every 52,000 years. The last cycle ended when we sealed this facility and fled into the void." "That was 52,000 years ago," Jiwoo said, her voice barely a whisper. "Plus 417 years, the archive confirmed. The swarm has been active for over 4 centuries. It has been moving through the galaxy, consuming worlds in the dark spaces between arms in regions where no one would notice. But it is coming here, to the core worlds, to the heart of galactic civilization." "How long do we have?" Vaughn asked. His warrior training had overcome his shock. He was already thinking tactically. The archive brought up a star map. A red line traced through space, marking a path of destruction. At the end of that path, moving slowly but inexorably toward the galactic core, was a mass of darkness. Based on current trajectory and speed, the swarm will reach the first major inhabited systems in 11 months. The core worlds, including Earth, will be reached in approximately 3 years. 3 years to prepare for something that destroyed the most advanced civilization in galactic history, Ralveth said. "We are doomed." "Perhaps," the archive said. "Or perhaps this is why we created humanity. To give the galaxy a chance. To provide a weapon against the swarm that it has never encountered before." The hologram looked at Tai Yang again. "You asked why this facility responds to human voices. Why your DNA unlocks our technology. Because you are not just our descendants. You are our weapons. You are the trap we set 50,000 years ago, waiting to spring when the swarm returned. The question now is whether you are ready to accept that responsibility." In the silence that followed, Tai Yang could hear his own heartbeat. 3 years. 3 years to save the galaxy with technology they didn't understand, given to them by a dead civilization. 3 years to prove that humanity deserved the legacy thrust upon them. "Show us everything," he said. "Show us how to fight." The station floated in silence, dark and dead against the stars. It had been there for thousands of years, maybe longer than any civilization in the galaxy could remember. Tai Yang Kim pressed his gloved hand against the viewing window of the research vessel and stared at the ancient structure. It looked like a massive ring made of metal that no one could identify. Strange symbols covered its surface, worn by time but still visible. 3 months, Jiwoo Park said beside him. She was younger than Tai Yang, barely 30 years old, but already one of the best xenoarchaeologists humanity had produced. 3 months and nobody can get inside the main database. Every species has tried everything. Tai Yang nodded slowly.
He had read all the reports during his journey here.
The collective had sent their best scientists. The reptilian Kelthax had brought their master engineers. Even the gaseous Vril had attempted to interface with the station's systems, using their unique energy-based consciousness. Nothing worked. The database remained sealed, its secrets locked away behind a barrier that no one understood. "Why did they call me?" Tai Yang asked. "I'm just a linguist. If the mathematical experts and the quantum specialists couldn't open it, what can I do?" Jiwoo smiled a little. "Because Ralveth is desperate. The expedition is running out of funding. If we don't make progress soon, the Galactic Assembly will shut this whole project down." She paused. "And maybe because you're human. We see things differently sometimes." Tai Yang wasn't sure if that was a compliment or just wishful thinking. Humans were still new to the galactic community. Only 200 years since first contact. Most of the other species had been exploring space for thousands of years. They had vast empires, ancient traditions, and technology that seemed like magic. Humanity was still catching up, still learning, still proving they deserved a place among the stars. The expedition shuttle took them to the station an hour later. Vaughn, the security officer, accompanied them. He was Kelthax, tall and covered in dark green scales that reflected the shuttle's interior lights. He said nothing during the trip, but his yellow eyes watched Tae-Yang with obvious skepticism. The station's outer hull was cold. The docking port had been forced open weeks ago, and now the research teams came and went freely through the ancient corridors. Inside, portable lights had been set up, casting harsh shadows on walls covered in those mysterious symbols. Tae-Yang studied them as they walked. They looked almost familiar, like something he should recognize but couldn't quite place. Ralveth waited for them in what the team had designated as the main research chamber. The insectoid scientist was massive, nearly 3 meters tall with 4 arms and compound eyes that glittered in the artificial light. Their chitinous body clicked and scraped as they moved to greet the newcomers. Human Tae-Yang. Ralveth's translator device rendered their speech into standard galactic. You understand this is our final attempt? If you cannot provide new insights, the assembly will recall all personnel within the week. I understand, Tae-Yang said. Show me the database entrance. They descended deeper into the station. The air grew colder. Emergency power had been restored to some sections, but most of the facility remained dark and silent. They passed rooms full of equipment that no one could identify, and corridors that seemed to lead nowhere. Finally, they reached a large circular door at the heart of the station. The door was enormous, at least 10 meters high, made of that same unidentifiable metal. The symbols here were different, more complex, arranged in spiraling patterns that hurt to look at for too long. A dozen different species had set up monitoring equipment around it, recording everything, analyzing every molecule. We have tried 17,000 different access sequences, Ralveth said. Quantum encryption, genetic sampling, mathematical proofs, harmonic resonance. We attempted to cut through the door, but the material repairs itself instantly. We even tried asking politely in 400 languages. Tae-Yang walked closer to the door. He could feel something from it. A subtle vibration that seemed to pass through his bones. What happens when you try the sequences? Nothing, Jiwoo said. Complete silence. No response at all. It's like the door doesn't even register the attempts. Maybe it's not looking for a sequence, Tae-Yang said quietly. He reached out and touched the door. It was neither warm nor cold. It simply was. Maybe it's looking for something else. Such as? Vaughn spoke for the first time, his voice a deep rumble. I don't know yet. Let me spend some time here. Alone, if possible. Ralveth's mandibles clicked together in what might have been frustration or doubt. Very well. We will continue our work in the other sections. Call if you discover anything. The insectoid scientist led the others away, their footsteps echoing in the vast chamber. Tae-Yang stood alone before the door. He pulled out his personal recording device and activated it, setting it to transcribe his observations. It was an old habit from his university days. Speaking his thoughts aloud helped him think more clearly. Beginning analysis, he said in Korean, his native language. It felt more natural than standard galactic. The door shows no obvious mechanical components. The symbols appear to be written in at least 3 different scripts, possibly representing different time periods or... He trailed off as something changed. The door was humming. It was soft at first, barely audible, but growing stronger. The symbols began to glow with a pale blue light. Tae-Yang stepped back, his heart racing. Around the chamber, the monitoring equipment started beeping frantically. What's happening? Jiwoo's voice came through his communicator. The sensors just went crazy. I don't know, Tae-Yang said, still speaking Korean without thinking. I was just recording my observations and the door opened. It didn't slide or swing. It simply ceased to be solid. The metal became translucent, then transparent, then nothing at all. Beyond it lay a chamber filled with light. Towers of crystalline technology rose from the floor, pulsing with energy. Holographic displays flickered into existence, showing star maps and data streams in languages Tae-Yang had never seen. And in the center of it all, a voice spoke. It was ancient and powerful, but somehow gentle. It spoke in a language that was not quite Korean, not quite anything else, but Tae-Yang understood every word. Welcome home, child of Earth, the voice said. We have been waiting for you. Footsteps thundered in the corridor behind him. The entire expedition team was running toward the chamber, drawn by the alerts from their equipment. But Taeyang couldn't move. He stood frozen at the threshold of the database, staring into the light, his mind racing with one impossible thought. The database hadn't been locked. It had been waiting for a human voice, waiting for humanity to find it. But why? How did an ancient civilization that died thousands of years before humans left Earth know that they would come? And why did it call him home? The defensive line stretched across 3 star systems, a massive undertaking that required coordination between 17 different species. At its center was the database station, transformed from a research facility into a command center. Bora Choi now commanded a fleet of over 3,000 ships, the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. But it still felt inadequate compared to what was coming. The swarm had learned from its defeat. Instead of attacking one system at a time, it had split into multiple fronts, forcing the defenders to divide their forces. Each day brought reports of new attacks, new losses. The galactic rim was now completely dark, consumed by the advancing nightmare. "We're losing ground," Sung-ho said, studying the tactical displays. "For every system we save, the swarm takes 3 more. We don't have enough trained personnel, enough weapons, enough ships." Taeyang stood beside him, exhausted from days spent coordinating with the archive. "What if we're approaching this wrong? We're treating the swarm like an army, something we can fight system by system. But Daeun's research showed it's a networked intelligence. What if we need to attack the network itself?" "You mean find some central hub?" Vaughn asked. The Kelthax officer had proven himself invaluable, his tactical expertise complementing Sung-ho's strategic thinking. "The swarm is distributed across light years of space. There is no center." "Maybe there is," Daeun said, entering the command center with a data pad. "I've been analyzing the swarm's movement patterns, the way it coordinates across such vast distances. Quantum entanglement allows instant communication, yes, but there has to be something generating and maintaining that network. A core processor, for lack of a better term." She displayed her findings on the main screen. "Look at these patterns. Every swarm element, no matter how far apart, shows synchronized behavior changes. They all adapt at exactly the same moment. That shouldn't be possible, even with quantum communication, unless there's a central intelligence directing the network." "A mothership," Minsu said. He had been promoted to squadron commander after the successful operation, though the promotion felt hollow, given how many of his unit had died. "The swarm has a mothership somewhere, coordinating everything. If we could find it and destroy it," Heijin said excitedly, "the entire swarm might collapse, or at least be disrupted enough to become vulnerable." The archive's hologram appeared. "The precursors believed as you do. They theorized that the swarm maintained a central processing hub, what you call a mothership. They attempted to locate and destroy it. They failed. The hub is heavily defended and capable of relocating across vast distances. Finding it is nearly impossible." "Nearly impossible isn't completely impossible," Bora said. "What do we need?" "A tracer," the archive said. "Something that can follow the quantum communication threads back to their source. The precursors designed such a device, but they never successfully deployed it. The swarm adapts too quickly. By the time the tracer could pinpoint the hub's location, it had already moved. So we need to be faster," Taeyang said. "We need to trace it, locate it, and strike before it can relocate. That requires precision and speed beyond anything your current forces can achieve," the archive said. "Then we'll find a way," Sung-ho said. "Give us the specifications for the tracer." Over the next weeks, the greatest engineering minds in the galaxy worked together. Heijin led the effort, combining precursor technology with innovations from a dozen different species. The result was a quantum tracer small enough to be delivered by a single fighter craft, but sophisticated enough to track the swarm's communication network in real time. The problem was getting close enough to deploy it. The swarm had learned to identify and destroy any ships that approached too closely. Dozens of reconnaissance missions had ended in disaster. "We need a distraction," Vaughn said during a strategy session. "A large-scale attack that draws the swarm's attention, while a small team deploys the tracer. That would require committing most of our forces," Sung-ho said. "If the attack fails, we'll have nothing left to defend the core worlds. If we don't find and destroy the mothership, defending the core worlds becomes pointless," Ralveth said. The insectoid scientist had fully integrated into the human-led command structure. their expertise in quantum mechanics proving essential. The swarm will simply continue to grow and adapt until nothing can stop it. The decision was made. They would launch the largest coordinated attack in history, against a swarm concentration in the outer systems, drawing as much of the enemy's attention as possible. Meanwhile, Min-Su would lead a small strike team to the location where the Tracer's deployment would be most effective. The battle began at dawn, Galactic Standard Time. 3,000 ships representing 17 species launched a simultaneous assault on 3 swarm-held systems. The firepower was tremendous, the coordination perfect. For a moment, it seemed like it might actually work. Then the swarm adapted. It had learned from every previous engagement, studied every tactic, analyzed every weapon. The black mass split and reformed, creating structures that absorbed energy weapons and deflected projectiles. Swarm tendrils reached out like living things, pulling ships apart with terrifying efficiency. "It's not working," Bora said, watching her forces take devastating losses. "The distraction isn't big enough. The swarm isn't fully committing." "Then we give it something it can't ignore," Sung-Ho said. He opened a channel to all human forces. "All units with precursor weapons, focus fire on Sector 7. Maximum intensity. We're going to make them pay attention." The concentrated precursor weapon fire had an immediate effect. The swarm recoiled, its structures collapsing under the matter-disrupting barrage. For the first time, the defenders saw something that might have been pain or fear in the swarm's movements. "It's working," Vaughn reported. "Swarm forces are converging on Sector 7. The concentration is massive. Min-Su now," Sang-Ho commanded. "Deploy the Tracer." Min-Su's fighter was one of only 5 that had made it through the swarm's outer defenses. The other 4 were destroyed as they approached the deployment zone, leaving only Min-Su's ship intact. He could see the swarm ahead of him, a wall of darkness that seemed to absorb all light. "Deploying Tracer," he said, his voice calm despite his racing heart. The device launched from his ship, a small silver sphere that disappeared into the black mass. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the sphere began to glow, pulsing with energy as it analyzed the quantum communication threads connecting the swarm particles. Data streamed back to the command center, processed by the archive and displayed on tactical screens. "We have it," Ralveth said, their voice filled with excitement. "The hub location is confirmed. Coordinates are coming through now." The location was deep in swarm-controlled space, protected by layers of defensive formations. Getting there would require punching through the most heavily defended zone in the entire battle theater. "It's suicide," Bora said. "It's necessary," Sung-Ho replied. "Prepare a strike force." "We need volunteers," he didn't need to ask twice. Hundreds of human pilots volunteered immediately, along with warriors from other species who had seen enough of their worlds fall. They knew the odds. They knew most wouldn't return. But they also knew this might be the only chance to end the war. The final assault force consisted of 247 ships and over 1,000 personnel. Every human pilot carried precursor weapons. Every ship was equipped with the latest modifications and upgrades. It was everything the Alliance could spare while still maintaining defensive lines. Heijin had one last surprise. She had been working on weaponizing the database itself, as the archive had mentioned weeks ago. "It's not perfect," she told Sung-Ho, "but I can redirect the station's power core to create a massive quantum disruption field. It will fragment the swarm's communication network across an entire sector for approximately 4 hours. In that time, the swarm will be vulnerable, confused. That's your window. 4 hours to reach the hub, destroy it, and get out," Sung-Ho said. "Can we make it?" The math says yes, barely. Then that will have to be enough. The assault began with Heijin activating the database weapon. The effect was immediate and spectacular. Across multiple star systems, the coordinated swarm movements became erratic. The black mass split into countless smaller formations, each operating independently without the guiding intelligence of the central hub. Min-Su led the strike force through the chaos. They flew through clouds of swarm particles that snapped at their ships like animals. But without the coordination that had made previous attacks so deadly, ships were lost, friends died, but the force pushed forward. The hub, when they finally reached it, was enormous. It looked like a massive organic structure, part machine and part living tissue. Swarm particles clustered around it in protective layers. But the disruption field had weakened even these defenses. "All weapons, fire at will," Min-Su commanded. 247 ships unleashed everything they had, Precursor weapons tore through the hub's outer layers. Conventional missiles and energy weapons followed, exploiting the gaps. The hub fought back, generating defensive fields and launching counterattacks, but it was too slow, too confused by the loss of its network. The structure began to collapse,